Louise, did you say something? You're muted.
Start video. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Poor Dee overslept, so I'm going to watch this here, but I'll make some announcements. Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to get the image back.
Yeah, my image is acting weird. I'm going to try again.
I'm coming in again too. Here we go.
It's not quite 11 o'clock, so. And
Oh,
Darlene's
okay.
I see Darlene, so we'll try again.
You can see somebody? I can't.
Yeah, Darlene's on there. So I'm going to leave and try again.
Okay, I'll stay. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay.
Hi, Sally. This is Darlene.
Hi, Darlene. It's waiting to launch meeting.
Yeah, I don't think they get it going immediately, but they'll be starting it soon.
Okay, can you get image or can you open meeting?
No, that's not our function.
Oh,
Those at the church will be doing that.
oh, okay. So maybe.
Hi, buddy.
Good to see you, Darlene. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Is it open?
Not yet, not yet, but we'll just wait for them.
Okay,
Yeah.
your image is up.
Uh-huh.
Yep, we're all here.
I'm just getting
More people here too.
Yeah, I guess Louise was having a connection problem, so she's gonna come back in.
Yeah, I was able to see her and me, and then
Something went wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, because when I came on, she was flashing. It was erratic at best.
Yeah.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear
You can
you.
see me. Yay.
Yeah.
Dee unfortunately overslept, and she was on her way to pick me up, but I just said, don't bother. It's easy to do it through Zoom.
Yeah. Okay.
How are you doing, Darlene?
I'm feeling better, but I still need to take more care of myself. I've not been doing a good job of that.
Hi, buddy. I don't think we've met.
Buddy Hensley, right?
Buddies, hi.
Hello there.
I'm going to go out and come in again
Why?
because I only am getting audio, but I'm not getting visual.
You know,
Really?
lately Zoom has been acting.
Oh, wait, here I am. It popped up when I hit leave meeting.
We'll see if Anne comes on in the church. I hope she does.
Well,
Buddy,
that's why we're here.
Yes.
we can have our own meeting. Buddy, what brings you to First UU?
I don't think he heard you.
Say again?
Buddy, what brings you to First UU? I don't think we've met.
I have been attending the UU Writers for a couple of years,
Oh,
and
I was
He's-
in that.
He's been attending services for more than a couple years,
been a little spotty lately.
4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. He's related to one of our members, Louise.
Who?
Do you know Eveline
Of
Joan?
course.
She's my sister.
Oh, my God.
Oh, when you said sister, are you from where are you from originally?
That's an unusual accent for a born Richmonder, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know, being originally from Boston.
I've been there, but I'm not from there.
Good.
Sally, where are you from?
Well, I lived in Cleveland. I went to high school in Richmond, and then I came back to Richmond in '92 after 30 years in New York
You've
City.
been around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have I.
Where are you from?
My people, we were all born in Kansas.
Oh,
And when I was 2 years old, we moved west to Oregon. I grew up in Oregon and California.
oh, how could you leave
Oh.
them? I go there. I want to live out there.
A sense of adventure.
What brought you to Richmond?
My husband passed the last time I went to California, so I was out there for 8 years, and he passed away, and both my daughters were in the state of Virginia, and I was so bereft. And I knew I needed to move anyway, so I just decided to move across country to Virginia to be near my daughters. Yes, I have family in California, a sister and nephews and cousins and whatever, but I wanted to be near my daughters.
Mhm.
I wonder how many of us ended up in Richmond because of either well, I didn't because of family. My daughter's husband came to Richmond to go to VCU grad school, but still, it's interesting our paths to Richmond.
Yes,
Our paths to First UU.
right. Yeah, I feel like Richmond is a very good size city for me.
Mhm.
Because I don't really like the huge cities, but this has all the benefits of a city without being huge.
And you can still park places.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe kind of, sort of.
maybe not in the fan, but
Growing. Yeah, right.
Well, I think Richmond, and it's weird if you read comments sometimes to the Times Dispatch or various places, people in the suburbs give Richmond a bad rap.
really,
There are people out there who are still fighting, you know, Monument Avenue and downtown.
yeah.
And to me, if I could spend time in downtown, I'd be a happy camper.
Yeah,
Now that I don't drive, I miss heading to the museums and the restaurants.
right, yeah. Yeah, it would probably be easier for you since you don't drive to be right smack in town.
Yeah. Buddy, let's go through. Buddy, where do you live in the area?
Oh, he's talking with his,
Oh, hi. Hi, Jennifer. I have a funny feeling the church is not running the Zoom.
no, I think they're
Your
supposed to.
speaker.
They already put the recording thing on
Yeah,
because Anne sent me an email stating that the Margaret had agreed to record the meeting so it could be put on the YouTube
Hmm.
for people to view.
Oh,
So the meeting should be happening, and they may be having trouble getting it up. Depends if they've got a knowledgeable sexton or whatever.
Let me
So-
apologize, jump in and say, I lost an hour this morning.
Oh, well, were
And
you
I was supposed to
sleeping?
bring,
did it too soon.
Were you sleeping?
no, I wasn't sleeping. I was up bustling around trying to catch up with things, and I'm very
Well,
sorry.
It
that-
was well spent, I'm sure.
You're-
So here
you're
we are,
Mhm.
and we're just chatting while we wait for the meeting, and we hope they
Yeah.
have the meeting for us. Otherwise, we're spending our time getting acquainted with each other. So there you go.
Catching up, yep.
Right.
Buddy, can you introduce your mate there? You're on mute.
Muted.
There you
This is
go.
my significant other, Jennifer.
Hey, Jen.
Hi
Thank
there.
you.
So good to have you with us.
Yeah,
Thank you. Buddy has been telling me about Anne, and I'm looking forward to hearing her work.
Yes,
Good.
yes.
I
I
hope you
too.
join us for other programs.
Thank you.
I'm the coordinator of programs, I think. I mean, it's like I have to, seems like I'm arranging them.
You've been doing heroically.
Mhm. Unfortunately, I have knee surgery on April 27th. So I don't think, maybe those of you who've had it, I can do whatever we do in May. We're gonna have a great program on April. Sally Wetzler, who is involved with the, what is it, the James River Park?
James River Park System.
Yeah, is gonna speak about the James, and
Who is speaking?
her name is Sally Wetzler.
She's a member of the church, a longtime member. She is the one who actually got the elevator approved on the plans for our remodel, because there were things that she would not do with the church. She was under protest because she's wheelchair bound.
Oh, wow.
And so she told the minister and everybody that she was not going to do certain things in her church membership until they made the downstairs accessible for people with handicap. And so we can thank Sally for making that happen. Anyway, she's done things with the James River Park System too. Go ahead.
Mhm.
I was just gonna say that to make it more accessible to kayakers and,
Right.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because Sally is very active. She
Yep.
may be wheelchair bound, but she kayaks and
she does? Wow.
yeah,
Wasn't she treasurer for a while for the church?
she has been treasurer of the congregation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think she is now. And there's Sally Young.
Oh, well, they
Hey,
may,
Sally.
hi Sally, we may have our own meeting. I'm sorry that Anne is not here on
It's only
Zoom.
9 minutes after, so we can just continue to enjoy each other.
Yeah. But I am hoping people do come for Sally's
Next
talk,
month.
because I don't know about you, but even though now I don't go to the James like I used to love it, and I actually lived for years by the pony pasture. So the whole thing with the park authority, and I mean, it's just amazing, you know?
Yes,
I think we're the only city or one of the cities that has class 3 rapids and
Oh,
that's
right
why
in
we-
town.
yeah,
Yeah,
right through town.
and that's why we have a number of sport. That brings in a lot of people, even from outside the city. I think we've had some various sporting events. The sports backers, even I think there's a group that kayaks, but they kind of looks like Chinese boats. And a few years ago, they did that. I mean, and I have a friend from high school who does it on the West Coast. So it's,
Wow.
yeah. So we're very lucky to have it. Now we've kind of course, eating is one of my things. Right now, you bring your, you can bring, bring your lunch, but I would love it because it's my last big outing before surgery.
In April, the April
Yeah,
meeting.
I would love that we, go to some place that's on the river. But unfortunately, those places tend to be expensive. So I don't know what we'll come up with, but I'm really excited about Sally doing this.
And that's April 12th, right?
I think so.
The second Wednesday, I think, is the 12th.
I have my calendar. I'm very organized.
Yeah, I was just looking it up. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, it'll be April 12th. Same time. We'll continue to set it up for Zoom because it looks like a number of us make use of the Zoom.
I think next month I'll be coming live.
Right.
Oh,
That'd be
good,
nice.
good.
Well, the reason I'm involved with daytimers is when I first couldn't drive at night, daytimers was a lifesaver. It was something I could go to and be involved.
In the daytime.
Right.
There are several of us in that boat.
Yeah. And now, by the way, of course, I took over, or I was asked, and my mistake was, oh, I'll help. For those of you who don't know, Ann Blowers and Jim Blowers were very active for years. And of course, Ann is now at, because I sent her a letter and it came back, Sunrise Assisted Living. If people know Ann.
Well, they moved there?
What?
No, just
They moved-
Anne only.
Oh,
Yeah,
Ann
I'm
moved
sorry.
there.
Yeah, Jim, my God, you see Jim in the church when he's there for everything.
Jim, yes, Jim comes to everything at church. He's probably at the church right now.
Right. But Ann, really, if anybody lives near there, I can give you her address and her room. She really desperately needs company. Reverend Amy thinks we, being retired, have all the time in the world and has called on me to sort of, can so-and-so go visit people? But it's hard for many of us to get out and
Yeah.
about.
We may have time, but we don't have energy.
Or, health-wise, or, but at least we can send cards and notes. I know originally Sandy and Ulysses, she
Hey,
took
Matt.
on, yeah, oh my gosh, look at all the people
Hey,
online.
Matt's trying to get us connected.
Oh, good. I
on
like
Jamie's
that.
laptop.
Yeah, he's using Jamie's laptop.
Well, Sally,
Oh, they're connecting the owl. See, there's all kind of people trying to get this
Oh,
meeting started.
great. Well, this
And
is,
Moira's probably one of Anne's friends or relatives, because Anne said that there were people who wanted
Yeah, here.
to be on.
yeah, we can see her. I hope
Yes,
they'll have a
Anne, I
closer
see you,
view.
Anne. I can't see who's in the background. They seem very far away.
well,
Oh, there's Jim. Jim Blowers. He's standing
yeah,
up.
we were just talking about you.
Yeah, we were.
But,
We have a lively presence here. Oh, I see Maddie.
great.
We have a lively presence here on the Zoom.
Anyways, so again, I'll plug the April program. Hope everybody who's here will go or do it through Zoom.
That sounds good.
And if anybody has ideas, for me personally, I'd like to, leave the church for lunch.
Next month,
But that's because I won't be out and about,
afterwards.
Yeah. If anybody's had knee surgery, please give me good stories.
Oh, I had it. It's wonderful. My right knee is as good as my left knee now.
Very good.
Do I dare ask Sally how much pain was it?
It wasn't that painful, but I did put a porta potty next to the bed so I wouldn't have to walk to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah, for
I'm
safety.
very fortunate.
You have somebody who's going to help you?
Right now, my daughter lives with me.
Oh, good.
Now,
Because my husband was alive then and he was a big help.
did you go into rehab before you came home?
No, I was in the hospital 3 days, so they came to my house
Okay.
for rehab.
Well, I have a good
I had
friend.
it at MCV
Yeah.
when I
Well,
had
I'm having it done at Peril.
what?
I have a good friend who called me. My sister.
I think they're going to start the program.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I can't hear them. You're muted.
And
And you're muted.
Jamie's
We can't hear
computer.
you. We can't
Jamie's
hear you.
computer is muted. Jamie's computer is muted. So if that's your sound, it needs to be turned on. We cannot hear you in
Can't
the
hear you.
library.
I'm sorry, Ann.
Just didn't fix it.
No. Unfortunately, I had a friend tell me it was very painful and I was going to have all these problems.
Not if you have a good doctor.
And
I'm a
there's
very good
Helen.
doctor. And I've started PT before the surgery.
You did.
I'm going twice a week and well, let me put it this way. We have a treadmill in my complex, but yesterday I accidentally, luckily my daughter was there. I was listening to my phone and as I was moving twice, I went from 1 mile an hour to 4 miles.
There
an
you
hour.
go. All right, let's be quiet.
Oh, it's the computers in the back. See, we're
No,
muted.
the
Now we
cameras.
can hear you.
Now we can hear you.
We're muted.
Not anymore.
Oh,
You're not muted.
great.
You're on. We can hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Okay, I don't know if I can mute everyone else, but we are not muted.
Okay, can you all mute, have they muted themselves?
I see
Okay.
a couple of them.
Yeah,
I'm working on Zoom
Okay. We can go, right? Okay.
Well, I just want to apologize for everyone there that I'm not there personally. I'm thrilled for everybody who's been here, coming, be it through Zoom or there at the church. Just two quick announcements. Anne, Jim's wife, if you can visit her or send her a card, it would be appreciated. If anybody else knows, please just let either me or Sandy know. And we can get us to, again, keep in touch with the people of us of a certain age. And the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'll shut up. Next month, I hope everybody comes. Sally Wetzler is doing a program. She's works with the James River Park Service, which kind of ties in with what Anne's talking about today. So I hope you'll join us either through Zoom or in person. And take it away.
I do have an announcement to make. I don't know if any of you know Adele McLean, but she passed out on Bird Park walking with a friend. Oh, no. And she wound up at MCV where she's going to be having a pacemaker installed. So that's before I came here, I bought a card for her. If you want to get well card for her.
Who is this?
Adele McLean.
Oh, my.
Former president of the church. Okay, let me see what I'll say for that. Rest and relax. Right now. From your friends and.
Okay, shall we, let's go ahead. We can send the card around as we go. All right. What I'm going to talk about today is what sort of the birth of my book, which was published in 1985. And I'll just sort of pass it around. It's been a while. Cover looks a little wild, but anyway, because it really does have a story behind it that I've never told anybody. Well, except friends. It starts out that I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, lots of streams and woods and pretty much of a nature person. I went to at Wake Forest and Carolina, and in the process, I discovered Walden, Thoreau's Walden, and my thesis and my dissertation were both on him. And what it all came out of was I was doing a study of his literary style so I could understand how he could take the facts of Walden and turn them into truths that actually moved the reader. That really fascinated me. In 1971, I moved with my family to Richmond, and Richmond was still in a state of shock from Agnes. You remember that flood? That was in 1969, and it was a big one. And then lo and behold, in 1962, we had Camille, and you know the city just sort of broke down, and. So, but I was really shocked when I came to see that when people talked about how much they love the river, they weren't talking about the James, they were talking about the Rappahannock. And I thought that was a little strange. And you couldn't get to the river because of the railroads on both sides. And so, and you weren't too sure you wanted to be there when you got there because it was a mess. It was 1972 before the Clean Water Act was passed. And that was to some degree because of the one person on the James River who actually owned the property. The rest was all owned by the city. And that was Newton and Carroll. And he sued Nixon. It was part of that suit. So things were, it was a sort of a turning point time, a little bit for the river. At least we had the Water Act, and we got a nice big sewage plant. Believe me, that made a big difference. But whenever I read the newspaper about the James, I was kind of surprised because it was some kind of a monster out there dividing the city. It was very negative kind of coverage, partly because of the floods, of course. And then after that, Camille, somebody, I'm not sure who, had called the Army Corps of Engineers to come in with bulldozers. And what they were going to do was, you had a lot of logs and trees and such that had caught on the islands. And they were going to take those bulldozers and bulldoze those islands. Of course, that would have meant the end of the islands. So Newton and Carroll went to court again and stopped that. And that wasn't easy because here was a little man in tennis shoes fighting against a bunch of very expensive lawyers that the Army Corps of Engineers had hired.
What they want to bulldoze them?
Huh?
To build there,
They wanted to bulldoze the islands to clean them,
to clean it for.
clean the stuff that had come down the river.
I see.
So, and then in 1975, there was Keep Home, and you're probably old enough to remember about Keep Home. And so generally there was a lot of, it seemed more like a monster than a river. And I was really shocked by this because that's not the kind of river I was used to. And so anyway, I also started doing research on colonial history just because it interested me. And so in 1981, the honors department decided they wanted to present a course on an interdisciplinary course on the James River. They had a biology professor who said, yeah, she would teach it. But then they said interdisciplinary, and she said, I can't do that. I can only do biology. So I've always had interest in lots of different things. I said, okay, I'll do it. Well, what I did, we had a once a week afternoon class, and I brought people to the class. It was a long class, all kinds of experts from the Water Control Board, historians, anthropologists, lots of different people. And we were really struck when they came, because they seemed to care a great deal about the river, about their view of the river. It was, they weren't being interdisciplinary, we were. And but they cared a lot, and they weren't talking to each other necessarily. And of course, that though we learned a lot, we were sitting there trying to put it all together, because you really have to with the river. And we did some field trips, went to the sewage plant. I bet many of you have been there. That's interesting. The students did a lot of research and trying to reconcile the perspectives. We couldn't have a book because there weren't any books. The only books about the James River were the river as a kind of a stage for what was going on the side. No, you couldn't find the river in it. So we decided you really needed to combine science and history and politics. And I wanted to add to that my little Thoreauvian twist to give a deeper look. I wanted to find the facts that can flower into truths, as he put it. And there was no real model even a scientific model to find on this. Well, in the spring of 1982, had a week's spring break, and I thought, I ought to write something about this. So I started writing, and I took one day off, one of those beautiful days to go to the river, but I wrote, and then I rewrote, and then I rewrote, and I wasn't really that happy, but I was trying to sort of get my vision down of what I thought needed to be done. And then that summer, I didn't have to teach, and my daughters were in high school, they did me. And so I decided, okay, this is going to be what I'm going to do. Couldn't find much that was written. I I went to turned out the best library was the Water Control Board, and spent a lot of time at the river and talking to people. Fishermen were particularly very helpful. And then I decided, well, I'd take the month of July and I would go rent this little cottage that a friend of mine had up in Harrisonburg. So I could, and I would go up with an armload of books. And I ended up writing a lot because you couldn't do anything else. And then I had to dump every single page that I wrote because I was having to write through things to get to the subject. So what I want to do is read to you from parts of the first chapter, because that's really the setup. It's funny to go back to it after all this time, but anyway. One of the oldest riddles goes something like this. What keeps running down and out but never stops and is much older than man is? The answer, a river, looks simple. Still, the riddling continues in one form or another as people keep finding words to name whatever river they depend on, trying to pin down its fluid realities as they come to see them. So it has been on the James River in Virginia, just as it has on every other river. I'm just gonna read parts from it. But I'm making the case that the James really, it does behave like any other river. But what I wanted to focus on were the river processes to organize the book, not what happens on the shores. It does manage to, it is unique in some ways. It does manage to stay in one state, even though its network stretches over more than 10,000 square miles of basin in 3 states. It has lots of boundaries, but it doesn't have to be a state. It's all within one state. That helps. It also behaves like any other river. It flows in one direction, persistently taking the easiest route to the sea. It gathers and carries the soil and anything else that washes down with each rain. And then whenever the current slows, it deposits its load, shaping banks and islands and raising its own bed. It can rage with flood when its headwaters are swollen by rains or slow to a trickle under dry, blazing skies. But even in the driest of seasons, it keeps on flowing from mountain springs that never cease. Always the same, but always changing. Sensitive to every mood of weather, its uplifting bed and rising sea levels, it shapes itself as it flows. Like every other river, it seems almost alive. Beneath its surface, any river is a self-contained world where its waters sustain numerous creatures who live by feeding on each other. Go on from that. The story of civilization is closely tied to tales of how these upright 2-legged creatures figured out how to take advantage of the gifts of fresh water, running water. Archaeologists know that any remaining artifacts or bones of the earliest people will be found along the banks of ancient streams, even though long dry or diverted to other courses. For this is where humans came to drink the water, trap the fish, and harvest wild grains from the floodplains. And this is where I really introduced that, we can talk about the river, we can look at all the processes of the river, but we are part of the processes. And it is a fairly typical river. It is unique because it can, the timing of its floods is so unpredictable, which is interesting since we haven't had a big flood since 72, but anyway. But if you ever look at a graph of the river levels, it goes like this. Most rivers are a little more even than that. And it can happen really fast. I remember one night I camped out on the river, upriver, and we had our canoes up quite a bit from the river, and we were back behind them. Well, when we got up the next morning, the river was up to the canoes. Some people believe that the best way to see a river in its complicated entirety would be to isolate it completely from all human influence. But that would result only in a deep silence, since to be consistent, one would also have to reject the words created to describe the river's processes. Each word necessarily says as much about the perspective and frame of reference of those persons who speak it as it does about the river they seek to characterize. These two realities, subjective and objective, are inseparable. Photographs too fall short of depicting the truth of rivers, for they must halt and distort, especially when they try to capture the river's motion. The story of a river and its people is neither tragic, comic, nor historical, but contains elements of all three. And then I talk a little bit about how these patterns were seen so clearly when people first came to the James. Of all the rivers in the world, this is one that educated men approached as a brand new world and described for those who could not see for themselves. You don't have any other rivers like that. Their eyes were open and their pens poised to record their developing romance with this river. The Spanish who preceded them up the James probably wrote of their first encounters, but their accounts are still lost in uncatalogued boxes in Spanish archives. Even if they could be found, they would tell little of the river's subsequent story, since it was the English, not the Spanish, who went on to build their version of a civilized culture there, one which was shaped to a degree by their first impressions and attitudes toward the river. In retrospect, their view of the river may have even been more partial than that of the Indians they displaced. Yet what they chose to see has become the heritage of the people of Virginia and even of the United States of America. However, the assumptions they bequeath have not always served their descendants well. I did not come to the James as deliberately as those 1607 adventurers did, nor did I expect to find any sort of new world there. And then I talk about coming and going down to the river, consulting lots of different histories to find out how people have seen it and put it into words. Here is one of the few places where and I talk about why I am at Richmond, why I was in the right spot. One of the few places where the river's depth and rocky bed allow anyone to stand in the middle of the river itself. Although I could literally balance myself here against the river's current, I know that unaided, I see very little, no matter how clear the water may be. So I keep trying on different lenses, each a fact, an experience, or a perception of the river. Individually, each bears unique colors and distortions. The trick has been to mount the lenses together, after eliminating in each as much cloudiness as possible, and hope that eventually much of the subjective astigmatism will be corrected and the colors merge to create a distinctly focused picture. In the process of focusing, somehow the picture that emerges is also a mirror. It is not just the river I am seeing. That was the first part of the first chapter. But you could, after I wrote that, I showed it to a friend who taught English, and he said, "Why don't you send that to Lewis Rubin?" Well, Lewis Rubin had been my dissertation advisor at Carolina, and he grew up in Richmond. So what can I lose, right? I sent it to him. He liked it. But I'm not sure he entirely agreed, as we worked with it over time, with what I was trying to do. Because what I was trying to do was to focus on the processes of the river and how that affected the people and how they affected the processes. Reuben said, so I was sort of deliberately trying to avoid the historical thing because it's not historical. You know, the same sort of things happen over and over again. Well, he wanted it to be more historical. He also wanted railroads in it. Well, I fought back on the railroads. But a friend of mine who had read it said, well, that's no big deal. He says, all you have to do is just rearrange it. And it will be historical enough to suit him. Okay, well, this was 1983. Well, computers in 1983 were, well, what I had access to at VCU, a huge computer that I had to go to the business building and type in everything. So that's what I did.
I remember those.
I typed in everything in the book, and I kept, changing things as I went. It was 2 months before they would give me the password so that I could print it. 2 months, and I had done all this work on it. But anyway, and of course, back what they did when they printed it, it was one continuous, thing, which I spread out on the floor and and crawled around. What, actually, that made sense because it made a fluidity out of the book. And it really did work pretty well, but it was very frustrating, I have to say. And then finally, we agreed, and he published it in 1985. He had just started up the Algonquin Books Press. And so I think I was in one of the first ones that he published.
Can it still be bought by on Amazon? Can it still be bought online?
Oh, yes, it's online. Oh, and in fact, the whole book is online. If you just type in River Time, it'll come up. After they decided not to print it out anymore, and I needed it for classes that I was teaching, I just put it online. I had the copyright, right? So that it's online, and it gets used a lot. It's now archived, but that's all right, it's still there. And for the next few years, I think Dave, so many talks to so many people. And it's funny because the other day I met a woman at church and she said, I know you. And I said, you do? And she said, yes, you gave a talk to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and I was there. So it's been a long time, but it was wonderful. It's been wonderful over the years to see how many really fine initiatives have developed. Of course, Ralph was there, Ralph White, and working for peanuts for the city, for the river, and doing everything. Well, now you have a whole group of people who work for the James River, work on the James River. And in fact, I live out in the country, and my next door neighbor's son-in-law works there. They're all over the place, but there are so many exciting things that you can read about that are going on at the river. We have the Rice Center now, which is doing all this wonderful scientific work on the river. There's a guy in the biology department who, well, he was in graduate school about the time my book came out. He's now ready to retire, but his thing has been the sturgeon. And one thing that I was fascinated by the sturgeon is quite a story because they weren't there when I wrote, and it didn't look like they were going to be coming. And I don't know, it was, I think there's a little sadness at the end of the book when you realize that, the sturgeon, are they gone? Of course, sturgeon can live a long time, and there had been very few since the 1930s after they pretty much wiped them out, but they could live a long time. Turned out they did. They go to the Sargasso Sea and they fool around there for a while, and then they come up the James, and that's where they were born. And there are sturgeon out there that were born here. They're doing a beautiful job of tagging them and getting lots of information from fishermen who find dead ones, and they're all, it's really a very positive story. I wish that, and you also have at VCU now, you can find a biologist who can teach this course. We now have a minor in river studies, and the head of that program is a remarkable young man, and he takes these kids on trips the length of the James, and they do research as they go. And his program, the River Studies program, has become a real name in the country. There's now 150 universities that have them. That's so, and they're just turning out these really brilliant scientific studies and kids who are going on to what there are now jobs for people who are looking out for the river. It's not a perfect world. The other day I saw an article that said that Henrico County has been flushing raw sewage into the river for a while. They got to get onto that. And they did, they have to pay a big fine and such, but sewage is still a very big problem for the river, and it will continue to be because it's an old combined system. And when we get a big rain, you're gonna get problems. There are some books, some very nice books out on, in fact, one has just now come out that is being published by the James River Association, which is a very active association, and which is about, well, it's this guy who was John Bryan. He was an assistant dean at the School of Arts. Turns out that his father and my father went to med school together at Vanderbilt way long time ago. And he's a fisherman. And he has written this book called The James River in Richmond about all kinds of things that are going on in the river right now. And there's another a book of wonderful photographs that's on the river. And there's another one, Ralph Hambrick has written one called Transforming the James River, that tells a story, a fascinating story of all the political stuff that went on, because it's a very political matter over the years, and lots of stories that I had never heard, and it's very well written. It's not dry at all. Pardon the pun. So that, and then there's another one by a guy named Bob Deans called The River Where America Began, where he travels down the river and writes about it as he goes. So there's some really exciting things that have gone on, and it's really, it's great. We're not perfect, but working on it. And as you know, I've got grandchildren who, that's where they want to go, is the river. They've got the boats, my daughter and one grandson live right like within blocks of the river now. So it's, and there was a time when no one would have done that. As you know, it's changed a lot, and the attitudes have changed a lot. So it's been a wild and fun time, I have to say. There's also on my website, there's another much shorter piece of a talk that I gave called The Heritage of the James. But anyway, that's the book. It's been an adventure. It's been I would say the highlight of my life in a lot of ways. And it seems to make a lot of things sort of come together. So that's it. There was one sitting over there in that library, but it's not there now.
What is your website?
It's, well, I can't, if you put it in, it just, put it in, Google it. I don't remember. I forgot, they changed the name of the site when they archived it. But I can tell you that if you just put in History James River, it'll be right there at the top. So
if you put her name in Google, the website comes up, her biography can come up. Just put her name in Google, okay?
Yes, it's true.
It's true.
Yeah, well, I taught online after I had managed to learn how to do all that. I kept with it, and I taught online from about 1992 till I retired 10 years later. The technology got a lot easier and a lot more available. But so, yeah, you'll find a bit of stuff on there.
I noticed that, you said earlier that Camille came in 1962.
No, 82.
Oh, Camille was 1969.
No, it's 72, excuse me.
That's
72.
Agnes.
72,
She said
1972.
Agnes, I think.
Yeah, Camille came in 1969.
No, that was Agnes. No, wait a minute. Which is which?
Okay, I remember that clearly because that was when I.
Okay, all right,
That was when I got
You're
married.
right, you're right. It was Camille in 69, Agnes in
Yeah,
72.
and it's a good thing I was in New York, Pennsylvania for the honeymoon. If I had been farther south, I would have been hit by, I guess, by Camille.
Yeah, it was, I remember being so shocked because the bridges were closed. And my husband, we lived in Chesterfield County and my husband was at MCV, so he got a day off.
You lived in Chesterfield County at one time? What part of,
Meadowbrook.
where?
Meadowbrook.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
I remember the whole thing starting with the plans. I mean, you mentioned the Army Corps of Engineers slightly in a negative light, but what about, I mean, the wall, the whole system that they put in to
The flood
help,
wall.
pardon,
Yeah.
the flooding.
The
Is
flood
that,
wall.
do you think that in itself, I don't recall it having been quite tested, but do you think that in itself will hopefully help the river? I know sometimes.
Well, if we get another big flood, I'm sure it will. And I'm sure that that's why the flood wall is there.
The gas stone, right?
It really, yeah,
Right, yes, sorry.
Yeah,
well, that's another story.
because can't people visit and walk on it? I can't remember.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the bridge. I mean, the walkway that goes across the river now.
What do you call it? Otterfield Bridge?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, there's so many ways in which we have learned to make the most of the good parts of the river. And I mean, it took money and it took a lot of determination of certain people, but that all happened. And it's exciting to see these things happen. I mean, and well, just the Browns Island, which I mean, it will flood when we get big floods, but it is built in they have developed it in such a way that the flood isn't going to be a problem. It'll just be wet for a while.
Not gonna be washed away, yeah.
Yeah. But I recently read that they are talking about the problem is the combined sewage problem when we get a big heavy rain. And they've done various things that haven't necessarily worked so well. But they have located a very huge part of the ancient sewage system and they're talking about making that a holding basin way it's under the ground, of course, to hold that, what they call the first flush. Very well called. But and they're talking about that because they already have one big thing to hold it. They're just south of the James River Bridge.
Yeah.
And they have to, but anyway, that's the latest. They keep looking for solutions because that is the big problem. But anyway, there were a lot of things that some people knew that were real problems, but most people didn't. And so nothing got done about it. You know, I remember being at the Water Control Board and there were people there who had literally spent their working lives on studies about the river. And they'd written these huge books, which were all sitting in this library that nobody ever read. And you know, that has to be a very frustrating situation. They were really shocked when I came to read in their library.
You said the book is out of print now,
Oh, it's been out of print for a long time.
so
It is,
I was just thinking Westminster Canterbury would like that book.
well, they do have, you can find it online.
Okay.
In fact, the River Studies class, the first time, well, they did it, the professor discovered the book. And so he required the students to read it before they started the course. Well, the last time last summer, they did went on the river, and he said, I would really like them to have the book. So he went on to, I forgot, one of these book sites, and he was able to purchase a book for everybody in the class for something like, I don't know, it ranged from like $5 to $15 or something anyway.
Okay.
So they all got the book, and then he sent me a picture later, and they were parked, their boats were parked up on the Upper James, and one of the students was reading out loud to the others the chapter on the Upper James. And he sent me that picture. I love that.
Oh, that's so nice. How long did it take you to write this whole book? Start to finish?
Well, I mean, I guess I started with the class, and it took about 2 years.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And it was wonderful, the people that I met in the process. One of the heroes of the book is Newton and Carroll, who was one of Richmond's biggest cranks, because he owned a boat business on the river there, and Carroll Landing, and it was washed out by the first flood. And but he had been dealing with sewage coming down and covering his landing for some time, and he would take buckets of water after a big rain to the council meetings. You got to do something about this. And as I say, he sued Nixon, and he decided that it was probably hopeless for the older people to understand. And he was the only person who really had access to the river because of the railroad, and for a long time. But anyway, he went out and bought himself a big camera, and he loved wildflowers, and he took pictures of the wildflowers, over 400 different kinds of wildflowers. And before they started digging up, because they had to dig it up in order to put in the pipes. And those pictures, and what he would do is he would go to the schools and present a program to the kids. He says, the hope is in the kids. And if you can tell them something really beautiful about the river, they'll care. And I've given up on the adults. And he swore that those pictures would never have anything to do with the city of Richmond. He was unhappy with the city of Richmond. But now those pictures are at the Lewis Kinter Botanical Gardens Library. And they had an exhibit of them not too long ago. So, an interesting man, I must say. Cranky though he was, he had good reason to be. And he was like the voice in the wilderness for so long. Nobody else was even noticing. And the stories he could tell me were just wonderful. He made these boats that had, fins, sort of like, kayak boats. It was fantastic and could go faster than any other boat.
Sailboats.
And, no, motorboats. And he had a lot of people coming from from Arabia and those areas to buy his boats. because they were the fastest boats. They could go 60 miles an hour. And in spite of the bends. Anyway, but he was telling me about this guy who was a prince, somebody who had come to buy a boat, and there had been a rain recently and the sewage was all over the landing. And he said, Newton said, what would you do in your country for somebody who did this? And he said, oh, that's easy. But he was a very interesting character. He was not a happy one. But because who could be? I mean, what he really cared for so much, the flowers, and were, you know, in order to solve the problem, they had to put in all these big sewage pipes and tear it up. And people came, you know, all these things that had to be done, yet it ruined his little Eden, I think. So it was sad to have a wonderful conversation with him, but it was, yeah, it was. But the paper always presented him as sort of the city crank, always, and you know, bringing buckets of sewage to the meeting probably didn't help his reputation. But he made his point. Not that they did anything, but he made his point. It was nice to run across all these people who've done really wonderful things. I mean, Ralph White, and I mean, there were so many people who have been voices in the wilderness. It's just not a wilderness anymore.
So it's really interesting what you said, you know, about the books that they had of studies that they didn't look at. What we had, it was about maybe 12 years ago, a pipe broke on Pump House Drive, which is very close to here, right behind the Carillon. And Tom and I were taking a walk, and there, what happened was, first there was just like a little pond, and it was like a cenote. It looked like clear water, and you could see down like about 6 feet. And then one day, and that just gradually developed. And one day we were walking by, and water began shooting out of that hole. And it shot up maybe this high. It was like a giant fountain, and it flowed across the road, and it washed out the curb on the way toward the pump house. So it was like a river right across the road. And then eventually they came and turned the water off, etc. And started a long repair, which took a long time. But they said they didn't know where any of those pipes were. There was no map of the pipes, and they didn't know how to turn the water off. I called 911, and they said, well, you know, this isn't really like an emergency. I said, it's like a river across the road.
Wow.
You know, it was flowing very fast, but you know, it was a foot high, water flowing across very fast. And they said, it's not an emergency.
You know, Richmond was one of the first cities to have a sewage system of any kind. Yeah, and that's why, I mean, here they've just now discovered there's this, you know, huge part of the old sewage system that they could store this in. You know, it's old.
What do they store in there? Is it like tree limbs or
Sewage.
just sewage, like sewage from your house, like
Oh, yeah.
from your bathroom or whatever?
Yeah, like the
Right.
beginning tank of a
It's the
septic
combined
system.
sewage, see, because all the water goes into these pipes, water from the roads, everything. So that's what they call combined sewage. Now, what they would prefer to have, the system they would have now would be a sanitary sewage system and an overflow system, but they don't have that, and they can't do it. In fact, Newton was trying to persuade them to do that, because at the time they were getting ready to build the Coliseum, and they had, you know, a lot of stuff was torn up already. And he said, this is the perfect time. We could, you know, put in, but they didn't. They
They
didn't agree.
could, they just didn't want to.
They didn't want to. It costs money.
Money, yeah.
And it was just this crazy man telling them to do it.
Yeah, oh, and they didn't
I
listen.
wonder if by the sound and still have sex on a cold night in February, rainy night. They used to close off some roads because huge hordes of Spanish salamanders would come out. And the road, like those that drive us over in the river.
Now, I discovered when I was doing the research that there are places along the river that will take the combined sewage and when you get a lot of rain and it just goes straight into the river. All the way up to,
And that's what the drinking water comes from.
well, it doesn't go to any, the pipes get too much and nobody, it took me a long time to find out where these places were, because nobody wanted anyone to know. But there are places in the river, and there's still maybe some where you don't want to go in that part of the river after a rain.
Oh. because it's
yeah.
contaminated.
Yeah, and
You really want that, huh?
but they have gotten, they have taken care of most of those now. But I mean, it was this big secret, but I kept asking, well, where are these? Where are these? And finally, somebody showed me a map, and I was really shocked.
Because I've been thinking you could get diseases.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to swim by pony pasture after a rain. You
That's
just,
exactly.
you don't.
You don't, yeah.
Yes.
All the way up that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I was a docent at Maymont, and Maymont was one of the first places in the city where the house had running water. And it was a big deal, especially for the servants, because they didn't have to climb all the way up, to bring water to the people. So number one, that's a little bit of history that I've learned. The second thing, I have a question for you. Is your book in print, or can we make a couple of copies or so to make it available to members of the church through the Book Nook?
What did she, I didn't catch everything she said.
I can give you the answer. She wants to know if the book is in print. I just found one copy on thriftbooks.com. Thriftbooks.com is where I buy used books. They have one hardbacked copy. And already stated that the book is available online. It is free for the taking online. Do you hear me, Louise?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm thinking as a church, we should encourage Anne's book, because it's great when we have authors within our church. That's all.
Of course it is.
So that's
we
why I
had
was
a-
thinking of the Book Nook, because
Pat
so
had
many
an
people.
exhibit for a while behind the visitors table of books written by people in the church. She was up on it.
Moira just posted another place to find used books on the chat. Book Finder, I think she said.
Mhm.
Abe Books often has it.
A book?
ABE,
Okay.
Abe Books,
Oh, like a book.
yeah,
Anyway,
I think
Thrift
that's
Books
where-
had one.
yeah.
As I said, it would be kind of cool, maybe if somebody can do some research, let Pat know, and we can get it in the Book Nook, or somehow publicize beyond our group that we have an author who's written an amazing book about something we all love.
And it's history now. That was a long time ago. And several times people have said, well, why don't you, update it? And I said, no, I don't need to. Because all these people writing these books are updating it much better than I could. And they are going into specific aspects and expanding on that, which is really great. The book has pictures in it, and these pictures were taken by someone my editor knew, and he was in a master's program in photography, and he had never been to Richmond, and he read the book, and he came and took pictures that he felt that he saw on the river after reading the book. So it's a kind of an interpretation of the book. So anyway, that was interesting. Actually, I think it was the son of one of his editors, but that's all right. He took some good pictures. But there are some wonderful, I mean, you know, there's some wonderful paintings that have been done of it. I've got it home. And some, you know, and a lot of people who are photographers have done this. I heard the story of one person who was a photographer, and I don't know how to explain this, but he got to a point where he would go to the river without his camera. That he was, what he was seeing there, he could not capture with his camera. And he would just sit there for hours, a little catatonic maybe. But I think that didn't surprise me at all. That you could begin to see things that you capture.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's some wonderful books. And this book that just came out should be really interesting. The one, John Bryan's book. I'm sure it has some wonderful pictures, but he's one of these guys who would at lunchtime just take a break at VCU and go down and fish. So he's a very interesting person. And I think the James River Association is selling the book. I'm not sure if it's online, but anyway, that has just come out. So another treat.
Does it cover other parts of the James River other than Richmond?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this really covers the whole river.
The whole river.
Yeah, but this is the ideal place, you know, to see it, because I mean, the river is running through all of us in this town. So the connection between people and the river is much more intimate in Richmond than anywhere else on the river. And I realized later as I was giving talks that sometimes I had to talk about sewage because and it's a very important part of the river where it runs through us. So it does.
And
yes,
I found 94 copies on bookfinder.com.
Oh, goodness.
Some of them are, you know, used, not very expensive at all. They go up, you know, I mean, from $8 up to 70, 80, 90, whatever. So there are lots of copies out there.
Oh, I hadn't heard of that site. That's great.
Oh, it's a portal. And it aggregates all these different sites like A-Books and Amazon and thrift books and everything. So, you know, that's where I go a lot of times if I'm looking for a used book and I want to find, you know, the best one for the best price and the best condition. And, you know, it's a great place.
Good to know.
Well,
Yeah.
when I travel, I go to used bookstores. And the first time I was in Stanton, I went in the used bookstore and guess which one I bought? I hadn't known it was even in existence, you know, even though I'm from Richmond. Walk in there and there is your book.
Yeah.
Great.
It's hard to believe it's been that long.
Yeah.
I mean, 85. Woo. I guess I got old.
2015, 2025.
I put the link in the chat for Bookfinder for the search I did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, sure.
Well, it is 12:15. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Just a reminder, we're going to continue this topic next month with Sally Wetzler, who actually, I don't know if she works or she's a volunteer with the James River Park Authority. So, and Sally Wetzler, Wetzler. She's a long member of our church. And actually, a few years ago, Share the Plate was part of the James River Park to help build to make it more accessible. So,
By the way, I think Margaret was saying that they are recording this and that they will put it on YouTube, maybe just for access for whoever I give access, or maybe just there on the church's YouTube. So
Great.
how about that?
we're going to get more publicity.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Ann.
And again, thank you. Sorry I'm not there in person and I miss seeing everyone, but it's amazing what technology can do. So I'll let you all enjoy your lunch. So we'll go and do our lunches and see you in a month.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, thank you.
Stay healthy.
Not sure how we turn it.
Somebody just hits to need
They'll
the.
just,
the lead.
Oh, on the back, the computer is.
Oh,
It's
wow.
all right.
Well, it's over here, right in the front. You can go up
Okay,
there
okay.
and see it.
I guess we're eating in the other room.
I'll bring it to you.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.